Hi, welcome to Myers ASMR. I'm so glad you're here. How are you? Relax. Relax. Shake off all of that stress and that mess. I'm just pulling up the quote. This world is perfect as it is and becoming sweeter every day. Yeah, this world is perfect as it is and becoming sweeter every day. And your capacity to rendezvous with the sweetest parts of it is extreme. Well, isn't that just great? And so is this leftover egg foo young. We ordered in last night, and this is the leftover. I love this dish because the patties are so big, so it allows you to have 2 meals in one. They give you rice, but I didn't eat the rice. You gotta be into eggs and onions. This is the shrimp egg foo young. I've had the vegetable, but I don't know, something about the broccoli. I think they use frozen broccoli. Doesn't taste good to me. Don't knock it if you haven't tried it. Don't you love these? You can buy those noodles in the supermarket, so you can have them anytime you want. I love eggs. I don't eat this dish a lot, maybe twice a year. I attempted to make it one time. It was okay. Without the gravy, probably wouldn't be good. It's just too good. If you're wondering how I do my hair and what I've done to it, it's basically crochet extensions. In fact, where's my crochet needle? It's right here. And this is what they look like. So, basically, my own hair is cornrowed. This particular install has 10. You know, the braids are flat to the scalp. And then I go under with my needle. In fact, I'll show you right here. And I reuse these. Some people cut them out, but it's such a waste. I'll show you how easy it is to take these out. Look at that. Too easy. And when I have so much new growth in between that it looks like a bushy mess, then I just take them out, undo my cornrows from the back, and get it redone, get it refreshed. So it comes with a loop. And these come in a pack. Depends on the length and the thickness and whatnot. These are pretty thin. I've been using these same ones for a few years now. And I just love how small they are. Like, it's not big and thick and heavy. So I love these. And I think a pack is maybe $7. I probably got like maybe 6 packs years ago, and I don't even use a full pack. I mean, I don't even use all of them, so I have a few left over. But you basically want to try to cover the cornrow, but still have it reasonable and as natural looking as you can, because I know it doesn't look natural, but it doesn't have to look completely unnatural either. So I just go in here like so, and I want to get this close to the root, and then I open up, make sure that's open, and I always use a mirror when I do this. And then I place the loop right there, I close that latch and I pull it under, and then I just undo it. This is my own way of doing it. Some people are able to loop it using the hook, and then I just secure it, and that holds even after washing, because I wash this stuff, because I keep it like, I would say, well, I used to keep them like for 4 weeks or more, and they were looking a mess. So now I'm gonna try not to keep them more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops. Otherwise, I start wearing a scarf to cover all of this bushiness that starts to come up, and then this grows, so it starts to push back and just doesn't look as good and neat, and it doesn't look well kempt anymore. So that's that. And right now I have this band on just to keep them down and away out of my face. So sometimes I think people want me to talk a little more. Some people want me to just talk about myself more. So I do have alopecia, and I keep it in this style because it's pretty much the best thing. It works for me to just do this instead of trying to work around what looks like a balding in the middle. So I taught myself how to make wigs, but I'm a very low maintenance person when it comes to hair. Honestly, I just want to just wake up and go. Don't want to be fussing, and I find with wigs, I always have to do something. Usually I have to roll them up at night, and then just trying to get the curls right, because I don't really know how to do anything else. I've never really learned how to make it look good with a flat iron. So usually I just put some flexi rods, but then the curls never look perfectly right to me. And then the rain, oh, forget about it. Being always nervous about moisture in the air and trying to cover it and taking it on and off. This here is the best style for me. But yeah, I do get tired of it, especially when I really just want to comb and touch my own hair and see how my own hair is doing. So this was absolutely delicious. And it tastes just as good the next day. I'm just messing with my napkin. I think it looks better when it's like out of sight and not on the table. So I've been drinking this herbal blend for like a week now. It's soursop leaves, hibiscus petals, chamomile petals, and peppermint tea bag. And it tastes phenomenal. And I make a small pot of it. And I just leave the herbs in there like all day. So I'll probably sip on this until tomorrow. If you're wondering why I never wear any makeup, it's because, well, I work full time. I'm a very busy person, basically. And I'm a keep it real type of person. I mean, if I were to go to work with makeup and then come home and make a video, I wouldn't take off the makeup for the video. You see me as I am. You know, I come as I am basically to my videos. Now, honestly, if this were my full-time gig, yeah, you'd see more effort because I would have more time. But I'm just doing so much. I'm on my way to the gym. So this is my gym look. Minus the big dangly earrings, of course. But I'm probably gonna put this here. Now I'll take this off and this would be my true gym look. And that's that. Pretty low maintenance, right? I started using my red light therapy. I bought a lamp off of Amazon. So that's something to look into. I'm not saying it's a cure-all, but look into it. If you've got some ailments and, skin issues and some pains, hey, they're saying it can help you with all that. I'm saying do your research. And no, I'm not selling the products. I wish I was. I really do. Right now, I'm not selling anything. But hey, if Puma wants to sponsor me, they can do that. I've been a Puma girl probably for 20 years. Well, let's get into the next fun part of the video. I'm gonna pick up reading The Great Gatsby. This book was falling apart, and I tried to glue it, so let's see if it worked. Looks like there's some parts that I missed. Uh-oh. Yeah, it's coming apart over here. Well, I will deal with that a little later. But let's pick up with chapter 5. This is such a good story. When I came home to West Egg that night, I was afraid for a moment that my house was on fire. 2 o'clock, and the whole corner of the peninsula was blazing with light, which fell unreal on the shrubbery and made thin, elongating glints upon the roadside wires. Turning a corner, I saw that it was Gatsby's house, lit from tower to cellar. At first I thought it was another party, a wild rout that had resolved itself into hide and go seek or sardines in the box, with all their house thrown open to the game. But there wasn't a sound, only wind in the trees, which blew the wires and made the lights go off and on again, as if the house had winked into the darkness. As my taxi groaned away, I saw Gatsby walking toward me across his lawn. "Your place looks like the World's Fair," I said. "Does it?" He turned his eyes toward it absently. "I have been glancing into some of the rooms. Let's go to Coney Island, Old Sport, in my car." "It's too late." "Well, suppose we take a plunge in the swimming pool. I haven't made use of it all summer. I've got to go to bed." "All right." He waited, looking at me with suppressed eagerness. "I talked with Miss Baker," I said after a moment. "I'm going to call up Daisy tomorrow and invite her over here to tea." "Oh, that's all right," he said carelessly. "I don't want to put you to any trouble." "What day would suit you?" "What day would suit you?" He corrected me quickly. "I don't want to put you to any trouble, you see. How about the day after tomorrow?" He considered for a moment, then, with reluctance, "I want to get the grass cut," he said. We both looked at the grass. There was a sharp line where my ragged lawn ended and the darker, well-kept expanse of his began. I suspected that he meant my grass. "There's another little thing," he said uncertainly, and hesitated. "Would you rather put it off for a few days?" I asked. "Oh, it isn't about that, at least." He fumbled with a series of beginnings. "Why, I thought, why, look here, Old Sport. You don't make much money, do you?" "Not very much." This seemed to reassure him, and he continued more confidently. "I thought you didn't. If you'll pardon you see, I carry on a little business on the side, a sort of sideline, you understand. And I thought that if you don't make very much, you're selling bonds, aren't you, Old Sport?" "Trying to." "Well, this would interest you. It wouldn't take up much of your time, and you might pick up a nice bit of money. It happens to be a rather confidential sort of thing." I realize now that under different circumstances that conversation might have been one of the crises of my life. But because the offer was obviously and tactlessly for a service to be rendered, I had no choice except to cut him off there. "I've got my hands full," I said. "I'm much obliged, but I couldn't take on any more work." "You wouldn't have to do any business with Wolfsheim." Evidently he thought that I was shying away from the connection meaning mentioned at lunch. But I assured him he was wrong. He waited a moment longer, hoping I'd begin a conversation, but I was too absorbed to be responsive, so he went unwillingly home. The evening had made me lightheaded and happy. I think I walked into a deep sleep as I entered my front door. So I don't know whether or not Gatsby went on to Coney Island or for how many hours he glanced into rooms while his house blazed gaudily on. I called up Daisy from the office next morning and invited her to come to tea. Don't bring Tom, I warned her. What? Don't bring Tom. Who's Tom? She asked innocently. The day agreed upon was pouring rain. At 11 o'clock, a man in a raincoat dragging a lawnmower tapped at my front door and said that Mr. Gatsby had sent him over to cut my grass. This reminded me that I had forgotten to tell my Finn to come back, so I drove into West Egg Village to search for her among soggy, whitewashed alleys and to buy some cups and lemons and flowers. The flowers were unnecessary. For 2 o'clock, a greenhouse arrived from Gatsby's with innumerable receptacles to contain it. An hour later, the front door opened nervously and Gatsby in a white flannel shirt, suit, silver shirt, and gold-colored tie hurried in. He was pale, and there were dark signs of sleeplessness beneath his eyes. Is everything all right? He asked immediately. The grass looks fine, if that's what you mean. What grass? He inquired blankly. Oh, the grass in the yard. He looked out the window at it, but judging from his expression, I don't believe he saw a thing. Looks very good, he remarked vaguely. One of the papers said they thought the rain would stop about 4. I think it was the Journal. Have you got everything you need in the shape of tea? I took him into the pantry where he looked a little reproachfully at the Finn. Together we scrutinized the 12 lemon cakes from the delicatessen shop. Will they do? I asked. Of course, they're fine, and he added, hollowly, old sport. The rain cooled about 3:30 to a damp mist, through which occasion thin drops swam like dew. Gatsby looked with vacant eyes through a copy of Clay's Economics, starting at the finished tread that shook the kitchen floor, and peering toward the bleared windows from time to time as if a series of invisible but alarming happenings were taking place outside. Finally, he got up and informed me in an uncertain voice that he was going home. Why is that? Nobody's coming to tea. It's too late. He looked at his watch as if there was some pressing demand on his time elsewhere. I can't wait all day. Don't be silly. It's just 2 minutes to 4. He sat down miserably, as if I had pushed him, and simultaneously there was the sound of a motor turning into my lane. We both jumped up. A little harrowed myself, I went out into the yard. Under the dripping, bare lilac trees, a large open car was coming up the drive. It stopped. Daisy's face, tipped sideways beneath a 3-cornered lavender hat, looked out at me with a bright, ecstatic smile. Is this absolutely where you live, my dearest one? The exhilarating ripple of her voice was a wild tonic in the rain. I had to follow the sound of it for a moment, up and down, with my ear alone, before any words came through. A damp streak of hair lay like a dash of blue paint across her cheek, and her hand was wet with glistening drops as I took it to help her from the car. Are you in love with me? She said low in my ear. Or why did I have to come alone? That's the secret of Castle Rackrent. Tell your chauffeur to go far away and spend an hour. Come back in an hour, Ferdy. Then in a grave murmur, his name is Ferdy. Does the gasoline affect his nose? I don't think so, she said innocently. Why? We went in. To my overwhelming surprise, the living room was deserted. Well, that's funny, I exclaimed. What's funny? She turned her head as if there was a light, dignified knocking at the front door. I went out and opened it. Gatsby, pale as death, with his hands plunged like weights in his coat pockets, was standing in a puddle of water, glaring tragically into my eyes. With his hands still in his coat pockets, he stalked by me into the hall, turned sharply as if he were on a wire, and disappeared into the living room. It wasn't a bit funny. Aware of the loud beating of my own heart, I pulled the door to against the increasing rain. For half a minute there wasn't a sound. Then from the living room I heard a sort of choking murmur and part of a laugh, followed by Daisy's voice on a clear, artificial note. "I certainly am awfully glad to see you again." A pause. It endured horribly. I had nothing to do in the hall, so I went into the room. Gatsby, his hands still in his pockets, was reclining against the mantelpiece in a strained counterfeit of perfect ease, even of boredom. His head leaned back so far that it rested against the face of a defunct mantelpiece clock. And from this position his distraught eyes stared down at Daisy, who was sitting frightened but graceful on the edge of a stiff chair. "We've met before," muttered Gatsby. His eyes glanced momentarily at me, and his lips parted with an abortive attempt at a laugh. Luckily, the clock took this moment to tilt dangerously at the pressure of his head, whereupon he turned and caught it with trembling fingers and set it back in place. Then he sat down, rigidly, his elbow on the arm of the sofa and his chin in his hand. "I'm sorry about the clock," he said. My own face had now assumed a deep, tropical burn. I couldn't muster up a single commonplace out of the 1,000 in my head. "It's an old clock," I told them idiotically. I think we all believed for a moment that it had smashed in pieces on the floor. "We haven't met for many years," said Daisy, her voice as matter-of-fact as it could ever be. 5 years next November." The automatic quality of Gatsby's answer set us all back at least another minute. I had them both on their feet with the desperate suggestion that they help me make tea in the kitchen when the demoniac Finn brought it in on a tray. Amid the welcome confusion of cups and cakes, a certain physical decency established itself. Gatsby got himself into a shadow, and while Daisy and I talked, looked consciously from one to the other of us with tense, unhappy eyes. However, as calmness wasn't an end in itself, I made an excuse at the first possible moment and got to my feet. "Where are you going?" demanded Gatsby in immediate alarm. "I'll be back. I've got to speak to you about something before you go." He followed me wildly into the kitchen, closed the door, and whispered, "Oh, God," in a miserable way. "What's the matter?" "This is a terrible mistake," he said, shaking his head from side to side. "A terrible, terrible mistake." "You're just embarrassed, that's all." And luckily, I added, "Daisy's embarrassed too." "She's embarrassed?" he repeated incredulously. "Just as much as you are." "Don't talk so loud. You're acting like a little boy," I broke out impatiently. "Not only that, but you're rude. Daisy's sitting in there all alone." He raised his hand to stop my words, looked at me with unforgettable reproach, and opening the door cautiously, went back into the other room. I walked out the back way just as Gatsby had when he had made his nervous circuit of the house half an hour before, and ran for a huge black knotted tree whose massed leaves made a fabric against the rain. Once more it was pouring, and my irregular lawn, well shaved by Gatsby's gardener, abounded in small muddy swamps and prehistoric marshes. There was nothing to look at from under the tree except Gatsby's enormous house, so I stared at it, like Kent at his church steeple, for half an hour. A brewer had built it early in the period craze, a decade before, and there was a story that he'd agreed to pay 5 years' taxes on all the neighboring cottages if the owners would have their roofs thatched with straw. Perhaps their refusal took the heat out of his plan to found a family, took the heart out of his plan to found a family. He went into an immediate decline. His children sold his house with the black wreath still on the door. Americans, while occasionally willing to be serfs, have always been obstinate about being peasantry. About half an hour, the sun shone again, and the grocer's automobile rounded Gatsby's drive with the raw material for his servants' dinner. I felt sure he wouldn't eat a spoonful. A maid began opening the upper window of his house, appeared momentarily in each, and leaning from a large central bay, spat meditatively into the garden. It was time I went back. While the rain continued, it had seemed like the murmur of their voices rising and swelling a little now, and then with gusts of emotion. But in the new silence, I felt that silence had fallen within the house too. Well, that seems like the right place to stop. Very interesting characters. I mean, they're just so different from the people in my life. You know, to me they say strange things. They act strange. Hey, remember that the world is perfect as it is, and becoming sweeter every day. The world is perfect as it is and becoming sweeter every day. And your capacity to rendezvous with the sweetest parts of it is extreme. Hey, if you like what I'm doing here, like and subscribe, donate to the cause. Catch me in the next video, and may you find lasting happiness. Bye.